Hello again. In our last video entitled Spring 2022 in Geoff and Heather's Dahlia garden, I showed you all the steps I take between getting the dahlia tubers out of storage and getting them potted up ready for planting out. In this video I show you how I grow them on in the greenhouse prior to planting them out in the garden, and I'll show you how I do just that, getting them planted out and tie them up ready for growth in the summer. Today is the 4th of May and I've come to look in the greenhouse to see how the dahlias are doing. The weather's been quite cool realistically, so some of them are doing quite well, but others just aren't. This is a variety called Rycroft Huntsman. Last year it started out just the same, very slow to start, so I'm expecting that it'll pick up speed when the weather warms up a bit next week. Now at this time of year I need to remember to go around and look at all the taller growing ones and take out the growth tip. This particular plant's got 4 sets of leaves, so I'm going to pinch out the growth point like that. This is to make sure that this plant will bush out rather than putting all its efforts into growing one flower on the top of a very tall plant. Now the little side shoots that are coming between that pair of leaves will start to grow and produce new shoots. That way I'll get lots more flowers than I would have otherwise done. Here's another one. Here's another one. It's now the 11th of May and as you can see quite a lot of the dahlias have really taken off. I've taken the tops out of most of them now and they're starting to bush out. We've just had quite a drop of rain now, brought the weeds on quite nicely. So it's the time of year when I update my spreadsheet and start thinking about my layout plan. I decide how many I would like of each variety, and then I draw up a plan for each flower bed, allocating a dahlia to each stake. At this stage it's quite a difficult job to do because although quite a lot of the dahlias are doing well, others have still got a long way to go. I have to plan on the assumption that dahlias like these are going to catch up eventually. They usually do. But if not, I've kept a few spares so that I can fill up any gaps. Most of the dahlias that I grew from seed are doing quite well now, so I've decided to allocate a couple of beds at the bottom of the garden where I normally grow my pot tubers to use that area this year for seedlings. So at the moment I've only got 36 pot tubers. By the way, if you're wondering what's a pot tuber, you need to look at our diaries from last year. Geoff and Heather's Dahlia diary. I'll look at the ones from April and May and June to give you more of an idea of what I'm talking about. So here's the spreadsheet that I use. I show the dahlia name, the colour, the type of dahlia it is, how tall it grows, and finally how many I'm planning to use in the plant this year. So as you can see, Mary's Joe Mander is a pink miniature ball. It grows 5 feet tall and I'm planning to use 2 of them, and I've made a note from last year that it's best to double stop this variety to make it bush out more and get more flowers. I then edit the data to show a count of each variety. So for example there I'm going to be using 4 of that variety, JS Dorothy Rose, and I'll use that to tick off when I'm making my plan for each bed. And now here's the plan after I've finished allocating a dahlia to each stake. I start with the tall dahlias first and work backwards. Here's the plan of the front garden. As you can see, each stake has been given a number between 319 and 340, and on the back of the sheet I've written the dahlias that I've allocated to each stake,
and I'll use this plan as and when I plant out the front bed. So here you see me planting up a couple of dahlias. You might think I'm knocking it about a bit, but once it's got a decent stem on it, dahlias are quite strong, and so they will take a bit of hammering. For each dahlia I make a hole and fill it full of rotted compost, using compost that I made last year from the rotted down stalks and leaves off the dahlias, together with leaves off all the local trees. I plant them in and then I tie them up. I make sure that each dahlia has at least 2 pieces of string to stop them blowing around in the wind. For the first couple of pieces of string I always use jute, the jute type string. That's the sort that will actually disintegrate as the year goes by, so that if the stems get quite thick, then the string doesn't cut into them. So that's this one finished. That'll keep it going for a while, those 2 pieces of string. Here's the second one. It looks like a stronger flower, a stronger plant. But again, get it in quite deep. Make sure that the top of the crown is covered. Firm it in and then tie it up to a stake. Because it's quite tall, looks like this dahlia is going to get 3 pieces of string to make sure it holds up well in windy conditions. And boy, have we had some wind recently. So that's that one finished. So that's the first 2 rows of dahlias complete. There's about 60 dahlias there, about 1/6 of all the ones I plant out. It's taken me a full morning to do it, so that's quite good progress actually. As you can see, some of the stakes at the back of the bed are about 7 or 8 feet tall, because that's how tall some of the dahlias grow. It's the 30th of May and I've just finished off planting out the taller dahlias. And I've also planted out the salvias and fuchsias that are put in front of the dahlias. But I've still got some dwarf dahlias to plant out at the front of the beds. And in addition, I've bought a job lot of busy lizards to use as border plants. And here are the dahlias that I grew from seed. They'll need planting out very soon now. They're getting a bit straggly, to be honest. It's the 1st of June. Yesterday I managed to finish off planting out all the dahlias, including the dwarf dahlias at the fronts of the beds. In case you're interested, I've placed the stakes around 50 centimetres apart, the larger ones, perhaps around 35 to 40 for the shorter stakes where the plants can be closer together. I'm hoping that later today I'll get a chance to mow the lawn. In Britain we've been having what they've called no mow May. In fact, for me it's always been no mow May, because I've never had time to do the lawn when I've been planting out the dahlias. So I'm now going to start planting out the dahlias that I grew from seed. I'm afraid that some of them are a bit on the spindly side. They've not had enough light. I've not had enough room to put them in the greenhouse to get better light in. I'm going to grow them quite close together, around 25 centimetres apart, and I'm giving them each a stake. You never know how tall a dahlia is going to grow when it grows from seed for the first time. I've had some that have grown to 7 feet in the first year. So I'm giving them tall stakes. I'd be interested to know what the professionals who grow hundreds of dahlias from seed do with theirs, whether they give them a stake. I can't imagine they do. It would take too much time.
And needless to say, they all get some compost to support them over the year.
So there they are, all planted up. There are actually 44 seedlings in this small patch. As you can see, I've put them a lot closer together than I do the dahlias in the main beds.
Each one of them has got 2 loops of string to stop them blowing around in the wind. And there's enough room for the stalks to grow wider. The other difference with the dahlias in the main beds is that I've not taken out the growth point on these dahlias.
The aim is to make them grow as quickly as possible and produce a flower. As they flower, I assess how good they are, and if they're not much good, if they're open-centered for example, if they're misshapen, or if they're just plain ugly, I'll throw them out, put them straight onto the compost heap. So that as time goes by, there's more and more spaces between the dahlias, so they do have room to grow eventually. So that's it. All the main plants are now out in the garden. So I've left room at the front for the little busy lizards that aren't big enough to grow yet. But finally, before we finish, here's Heather.
Just to prove I'm still alive and just not...
But finally, before we finish, here's Heather.
Just to prove I'm still alive and just not put me on the compost heap. One of my jobs during the planting season is to get the dahlias out of the greenhouse to where Geoff is digging them in. It's very windy today, so I'm doing this one at a time to protect them. It's going to be a long day. Another job is labelling. I've done 300 of these. We use polypropylene string as it doesn't disintegrate for 100 years. That should make sure we don't lose any labels. Not always easy to put these things on, as you can see. My favourite task is planting up the tubs. Geoff uses a mixture of bought plants and cuttings. The display doesn't look much at the moment, but by August it should be blooming marvellous.